Alright, I'm going to talk about kind of a maybe a strange topic, or sort of a combination of things. There was this time when I was like digging into mud flood, Tartaria, and free energy device, and all that kind of stuff, right? And trying to remember the website that I'd found. And I started digging into like everything because I was curious about the free energy devices and stuff like that, right? And I find some old paper that I read. I don't know if it was just one paper or more than one paper, but it was somebody writing about. Uh, I don't think it was directly related to like Tartarian free energy or anything, but it was interesting. It was like this old paper that some guy had written, and I think there might have even been more than one of these papers about this. It was when they started putting in regular like power lines and when they started pumping out radio waves and things like that. When they started using, God, alternating current or whatever, basically is what I'm talking about here. That and as well as radio waves and things like that. This dude was he was researching, and he was I think he was like a. I wish I could. If you guys can help me find the the papers that I'm talking about, these are like really old, like 1800s or something kind of like papers. And I think that the guy was like a scientist, but he also used to be, or was like a minister or something. And he wrote something about how uh, basically it sounded like he suspected. I don't know why I didn't think of this, but until later, I thought of it like, a couple years after I read this stuff, I thought about it and I was like, it just something made it come to mind. Because I was thinking, like, if there's, say there's like demonic spirits or ghosts or whatever you want to call it, how do they, or interdimensional, visible being, all this crazy sounding shit, right? How do they break through and come into our world or whatever, right? Could they be traveling on, well, okay, like, there's a lot of things that changed, um, while a lot of, things became, a lot of people were walking more on pavement and the natural surfaces. People started having, rubber. Our feet were, we were no longer grounding. So that because I was interested in grounding and I was interested in all this stuff. Somewhere along the way, I came along some old paper, or I think it may have been more than one paper that, and then years later, I kind of connected up, and I was thinking about, however crazy it kind of sounds, could these demonic entities or whatever you want to call, uh, some Gnostics would say archons, so on and so forth. Could they be traveling along, uh, using the sort of radiation of the electrical energy? Because think about how, well, I mean, it's a wave, it's a type of waveform, and someone, I remember, this is all kind of, it's kind of sort of related. Like, I don't know if you, I remember hearing some musicians talk about how they, the most of the music that's produced now is produced in this frequency that's like a negative frequency, and something to do with a solfeggio scale or something. I'm sorry, I don't remember all the specifics of it. It's just kind of off the top of my head here, but But that's kind of what the pastor slash scientist was sort of indicating in his papers, is that he'd seen since the installation of the power lines and the broadcasting of radio waves. I don't remember what year the thing was written in. Okay, I could be wrong about the time period it was written in, but whatever it was written, he was talking about how he noticed, and he and others had noticed a drastic increase in like violence and negativity, people not being as friendly as they were before, so on and so forth, and thinking, I don't think he was indicating anything about demonic whatever, but I'm just saying, they were basically saying that he was noticing a difference in the behavior of people since, radio waves and alternating current was becoming more prevalent everywhere. The attitudes had changed. People had become less friendly, more standoffish, more negative, uh, more violent, angry, things like that, basically. And, I'll tell you, I've noticed differences definitely since, there's a lot of things, and I have noticed that a lot of these differences in just the way I feel and the way that other people behave do seem to kind of coincide with various changes in this type of waveforms that we were introduced to. I mean, well, things started to get kind of different. It was around, they did start to get a little different when they got rid of the incandescent light bulbs, and and everyone started using these compact fluorescents that put out more radiation and a more unnatural light. I noticed that there was a difference in the way that there's been a difference in the way I felt and the way that other people behaved and things like that, that coincided with around the time period when they made us get rid of the incandescent bulbs and replaced it with the compact fluorescents. And now we're on basically the most of us with the LEDs and stuff like that. But that's not the only thing. During after that, you got the introduction of obviously a lot more electrical wiring. I mean, over the years, as there's been an introduction of one thing after another, and boosting the amount of cell towers, uh, introduction of Wi-Fi, so on and so forth, and different, you know, increases in the power of the signal and stuff like that. I have noticed a difference in the way people behave that seemed to coincide, and in the way that I felt, like the how I sort of felt less good most of the time. And what really seemed to stand out to me, I think this is when I thought of this, was it was a few years back or something, back when I was still living in a mobile home there in the country, and we had a power outage, and the power was out for like a few hours, and I remember I felt like $1,000,000. Like, I felt better than I had felt in years, basically, just because the power went out for a few hours. And I could notice a difference that if I uh, and I noticed a difference in the way that my mom and her husband behaved. Like, the level of their consciousness seemed to go down, and the negativity in the house, just with a lot of the time, it seemed like and the health, and her decline in health, it all kind of lines up somewhat. Uh, more sleep disturbance and declining health more rapidly. It all started around the time I tried to talk them out of it, but they wanted to charge more if they didn't let them put in the smart meter, which was closer to their room and stuff. And then it was it was that, and then Wi-Fi and all that, and it just kind of. And I've done some research on the benefits of earthing, and it totally makes sense. It makes sense to me. I mean, I'm not gonna go walking around barefoot, too much, especially, depending on the weather or what you're gonna end up stepping on. You never know. But I mean, maybe shoes with leather soles or some kind of earthing shoes would maybe be a good idea. Maybe having some other way of insulating yourself would be a good idea. Oh, well, since I was gonna, if I was gonna get into more crazy sounding shit like spirits and demons, whatever the heck, right? And how it might relate to this sort of thing. I had a theory about how you could potentially be able to photograph or view these beings or whatever, but I'm not really sure how to go about it. It's the same basic idea as well, though they may not be physically in the same realm. uh, there are ways of measuring waveforms and potentially visualizing such waveforms, like a lot of these sorts of technologies, and for instance like smart meters and LED light bulbs and things like that, could be used in such a fashion to where they could with certain types of bulbs and things like that, and devices, they could and like your smartphone, for your camera and your smartphone is another way they can do it. But it's just the signals and echo. uh you remember the maybe Batman, uh was it the one with the Joker in it, or with the Heath Ledger or something, or was it the one with Bane? I'm trying to remember. Remember that Batman movie where he uses all the cell phones in the city to create sort of like an echolocation thing, so he could locate. I think it was the Joker and his men or something, and he he's got this like room with all these screens, and he's like spying on the whole city. You remember that? And he's like just mapping out the buildings. He knows where everyone is because of the signals. Because it's see, that could work, and I believe that they have the capability to do this. That's one of the things that they could do with, for instance, smart meters attached to your home, combined with LED light bulbs, and so on and so forth. Is they could create something with a 3D map of your entire home, know exactly where you're located at all times, and so on, and see through your walls and all that good stuff, right? Basically, by I imagine that would be quite possible with. Well, you could think of it like radar or echolocation or something. Everything is waveforms. You got, light waves, sound waves, electrical, radio, light waves, sound waves, radio waves, uh, uh, the waveform of the electrical signals running through your power line, you know, the waveform from your Wi-Fi, the light wave, from your light bulb, all of that. I I would say I have a pretty good idea that they quite capable of that they know about, and there's certain various experiments that can show like you can find, other things. For instance, you can find on like videos on YouTube where a guy will hook up. I've seen guys that hook up a signal, or I don't know exactly how they did it. I mean, I did pass advanced electronics, but that was a long time ago, and I don't know exactly how to go about it. But I've seen them, hook up a signal like a breadboard, and or I mean, a circuit, and basically he made it so that he could record and also broadcast like a sound that he could pick up with an LED. That's a whole other thing that's sort of different from what I'm talking about. That's more of a scale of audio surveillance or subliminal messaging through the waveform of light. Be more, yeah. That so that's kind of a different story, but sort of related to the sort of thing that potentially could be done with the sort of technology that we're surrounded by, that we but okay, let's say that there were interdimensional beings, aliens, demons, or whatever the heck. Say that they were phased out of our dimension or something, and somehow invisible, and some people are able to capture them, sometimes bits in a puff of smoke, or in a cloud, or vapor, fog, as you can find plenty of photographs of such occurrences. And then, well, and videos. Well, if that's the case, then they must be, if fog or a cloud or vapor, smoke will form around the face and form of them, then there must be something there that, I mean, even if you can pass your hand right through them, your arm right through them, whatever, they're not physically there. But if they can be photographed in such a way, if they did in fact exist in such a manner, and if they show up, if smoke and vapor and things like that will form around their figure, allow you to see the approximate shape of their face and things like that, then there's got to be something like a waveform of some sort there that is causing the resistance that's just enough for vapor or smoke to kind of bounce off of a little bit on some level. Maybe electromagnetic charge or something. You know what I mean? So, what would Batman do? Right? Yeah, basically, it just, I mean, you think that it's something along the lines of like an oscilloscope, but it would have to be something more. You could probably detect things with an oscilloscope. You'd have to be able to figure out how to use different types of waveforms to be able to pick up all the different variations in waveforms. For instance, if you stand in front of a light bulb that casts a shadow onto the wall behind you, that's because your body formed an obstacle, and the light waves couldn't penetrate that obstacle, in the same way that if you're in an insulated building or behind an insulated wall, a directed signal is not going to be able to make it through if that room is insulated, or insulated from an electrical signal. this theoretical stuff. Some of it crazy, some of it based, if you want to think so. Some of it based in, a bit of scientific research, and I just find some of this shit interesting. And if somebody could help me remember what the dang one of these websites, somebody who knows about this, who's dug into mud flood and Tartaria and all that kind of crap, you give me some links to websites or something that had a lot of papers and things and I don't know. I was just digging through a bunch of random documents. Maybe I could find that again because it was interesting. I've read a lot of papers and scientific papers and documents and stuff. I had the whole read most of the papers in the Chenair library of Thomas Bearden, like the stuff about what was that book on old Soviet scalar technology, Fer de Lance. That was interesting. And a lot of like things like papers by Tesla and Einstein's theory of relativity and stuff like that. I used to like to read a lot of stuff, like that. And sometimes I still find some obscure, interesting papers that are just look at and read, and I don't know. Maybe no one knows that can recall having seen a paper like the one I initially spoke of on the introduction of wireless technology and alternating current changes to people's moods and behavior. But it was interesting. I'd like to find that and read it again, take a look at it and see what else I can find to compare it with, and just because sometimes I'm reminded of it. I got this little Schumann resonance device that's I don't always use it, but I think it is maybe a little helpful, or it certainly does something. It's and I mean I'm talking about something that actually has the coil and made to resonate like like the type of thing that you would buy in order to make your audio sound better in a music room or something, that sort of thing, not like, but like a smaller version of that. Not although I must admit I have bought little squares of copper in the past because it was really 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 cheap and had a good line of bullshit, so it was like 50 cents or something. She was like, yeah, fuck it, 50 cents. Because claimed to be able to mimic the draw power from the battery in your watch to mimic the effect of the Tesla watch. I was interested in that sort of thing about the Schumann resonance. Trying to get in tune with the natural resonance of the Earth as the frequencies change. And, it's like 7.83 hertz, I believe, if I remember correctly. Anyways, I guess I'll get off of here now.